Welcome back to our Advent series, Miraculous Births. As always, if you have not heard the sermon from last week recounting John's miraculous birth, I highly encourage you to go back and watch on South Rock's page. Now, if you're anything like me, Advent is often a time of reflection on Christmas's past. So many people mourn that Christmas isn't what it used to be. We tend to agree with the great Christmas theologian Clark Griswold when he recognizes that people are trying to walk out on his good old-fashioned fun family Christmas. It's always peculiar when I hear conversations about Christmas in terms of tradition. You see, the reality is that when we talk about a good old-fashioned Christmas tradition, we actually aren't talking about an old tradition. The stuff we talk about is only roughly 200 years old and still developing. I'm not sure we really want to participate in an old-fashioned Christmas. So let me tell you why. But before I take you through the briefest history of Christmas, I encourage you to read Ace Collins's Stories Behind the Great Traditions of Christmas for a greater detail of the celebration's history. It's a tremendous resource that will help you appreciate those in the faith who worked so hard for a day to recognize the advent of our Savior. Okay, with that said, let me tell you that I believe Christians might actually feel encouraged about the season we celebrate today when we consider what Christmas was actually like in the days of old. For centuries, Christmas was anything but a holy day, but it was most often a legalized exhibition of excess, a day set aside for ignoring laws and terrorizing citizens, and the day consisted of singing lewd songs, drinking rum, and rioting in the streets. December 25th has always been a festival day as far back as history is recorded. Almost every culture used this time to celebrate the rebirth of the sun. Midwinter festivals were held in Babylon, Egypt, and even ancient Germany. The Phrygians used this time to celebrate the sun god Mithras in Persia, while the Greeks really increased the partying to a new level. When the Romans conquered the Greeks, they changed the festivities to recognize Saturnalia, which became a week-long debaucherous party from December 17th to December 24th, dedicated to the god Saturn. This was a time of public gatherings, like office parties, candlelights, gift exchanges, singing, drinking, and slaves even received a brief time off work. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but this was all before Jesus arrived on the scene, so there wasn't a Christmas to celebrate. Well, this is only kind of true. Even when Jesus' miraculous birth did happen and his ministry impacted many, and even after his death, burial, and resurrection, the birth of the church, the expansion of God's kingdom here on earth, Christmas wasn't an actual holiday. In fact, individual congregations picked a variety of days to recognize the birth of Christ, and it wasn't a festivity, but was intended to be a normal day only, including personal reflection. It wasn't until later that Christians began assigning December 25th as a day of reflection, and they only did that because they were concerned with members of their church falling prey to the ruckus carnivals of Saturnalia and other pagan celebrations. Much later, when the British Empire became a political influence, the festivities became a time of drinking and singing. Songs of the era are still tunes we sing today. This includes We Wish You a Merry Christmas, which alludes to the nature of the carnival. Large bands of laborers would go to upper-class homes demanding food, drink, and money. And if the homeowners didn't comply, their homes were often looted while belting out desires for figgy pudding and that we won't leave home until we get some. Over the next few centuries, Christians were so frustrated with the season that even Puritans attempted to outlaw Christmas, which is an attitude that they took to the New World. The laws were so effective that early America still had congressional meetings on December 25th, not even bothering to acknowledge Jesus' birth. Yet, despite legal issues, the quote-unquote lords of disorder took over the streets in populous cities, forcing the New York City Council to form a special police force to deal with the lawlessness of the season. It wasn't until a minister in 1822 named Clement Clark Moore, who shared a poem he had written called A Visit from St. Nicholas, now known as The Night Before Christmas, and an author named Charles Dickens 2 decades later, who penned A Christmas Carol, that Christmas became a virtuous season. Americans, then later the rest of the world, looked collectively for the first time at their values. It took another 3 decades for Christmas to evolve from a time characterized by drinking and riots into a day of family, giving, and worship. It took more than 18 centuries for churches who all but ignored Christmas to begin opening the doors for believers to worship, sing of Christ's birth, and celebrate not just Easter, but his first advent as well. This week in that celebration, we looked at the miraculous birth of John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus. We looked at all the circumstances surrounding Zechariah, his ministry, and his wife Elizabeth. We were told of the announcement that they will have a child and how it was a miraculous intervention because Elizabeth was barren. We are told that this child would prepare the way for the arrival of the king and how he leaped in the womb when he was next to his pregnant aunt. John had a sense of purpose from the time he was conceived. Now, his life and ministry are best summed up with what he said in John chapter 3, verses 27 through 30. A person can receive only what is given them from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said, I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater. I must become less. All of his life was about the real miracle of Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. It wasn't traditions, festivities, or even some moral code that drove him. It was not a deep longing for a past experience, but an eager anticipation of the arrival of the Savior of the world. I challenge you today to change your mind. Don't lose yourself in the idyllic or be chained to tradition. Shift your eyes forward. The first Christmas was a simple time of beauty and wonder. The birth of Christ was less about how we celebrate and more about the family of God. Though you may grow tired of how the holiday has been hijacked by commercialization, it has opened the door for Christ to once again become the focal point of the season. Jesus made you and I the reason for his season. We are objects and recipients of his salvation. The truth allows us to sing not so much in festivity, but in truth. It is the most wonderful time of the year. I genuinely intend these devotions to be a blessing for you. I hope they help you realign your day in the center of God's favorable presence. If you don't have a church to celebrate these things, we would like to invite you to South Rock Christian Church, where we meet on Saturday nights at 5 o'clock and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30. This year, we have special Christmas Eve services at 11, 2, 4, and 6 that we would love for you to come to. Until then, have a Merry Christmas and be blessed.